Hello and welcome back, my dear students. I hope everyone is doing well and good and staying safe. Today we will continue with the same chapter, that is memory and forgetting. In the last class, we have discussed what is memory, the three domains of memory, that is encoding, the process of encoding new information, and storage, the process of maintaining new memories, and encoding, the process of bringing back stored memories. We have also discussed information processing approach, how the human memory is compared to a computer system, and also we have discussed the memory systems, sensory, short-term memory, and long-term memory, and finally we have discussed the types of long-term memory. Today we will be discussing the level of processing. And the next topic will be knowledge representation and organization in memory. And third, we will be discussing memory as a constructive process. Firstly, we will be discussing the levels of processing. In the last class, we have discussed the memory information processing approach. From there, we have learned that the memory process have different characteristics, different stages, each with its own characteristics. Now, information is also transferred from stage to stage until some of it finally dwelt in long-term memory. A contrasting model of information processing approach, that is what is called as levels of processing. We will be dealing with this today. This was proposed by Robert S. Lockwood and Frederick I. M. Craig in 1972. According to the levels of processing, incoming information can be worked at different levels of analysis. The deeper the analysis, the greater it will be remembered. Craig and Lockwood have proposed that it is possible to analyze the incoming information at more than one level. This level progresses from the shallowest, that is structural, and to the deepest level, that is semantic. The first level of processing is structural processing. The structural processing, it sees the structure or the shape. This first level is simply perception, which simply gives us immediate awareness of the environment. For example, and letters A, B, C. Processing how the information, processing how a word looks like is known as structural processing. Structural processing is the first and the shallowest part of levels of processing. For example, if you have seen a restaurant but only engage in structural processing, you might only remember the sign was purple and it was written in a cursive style, but not actually remember the name of a restaurant. At an intermediate level, it is a phonetic processing. In this phonetic processing, it is how we hear the sound or what it sounds like. We compare the sound of the word to other words we have heard in order to return some level of meaning in our memory. Returning to the same example of remembering a restaurant, say for example, if a word is in another language, that is vermicelli, now if you have processed the name of the restaurant in phonetic processing, you can think that it starts with V and it ends with belly. Here in these levels of processing, the meaning of the input is analyzed. Analysis to the deep level of meaning gives the best memory. The deeper the processing, the greater it will be remembered. Now, this level of deepest level of processing is semantic. Semantic processing is when we apply the meaning to words and compare it to other words with similar meaning. While processing a deeper information, rehearsal plays a role. Elaborative rehearsal is an important process that gives meaningful information when we try to analyze the information. Now, elaborative is a type of memory rehearsal that is useful in transferring information into long-term memory. This type of rehearsal is effective because it involves the meaning, the importance of memories, memories of information and associated with to other already stored in memory or previously learned concepts. The main focus of elaborating the meaning is its contents in much detail. The greater the degree of elaboration, the more likely that will be remembered in long-term memory. So each of these levels allows a person to make sense of the information and relate it to past memories. Thus, the level of processing theory emphasizes more on the depth of analysis, that is, the elaboration of incoming information, and this level is based on the principle that the deeper the processing, the greater it will be remembered. Now the next topic that we will discuss is knowledge representation and organization in memory. In this section, we will look at the organizational structure that contains in long-term memory that acquires over a period of time. Since long-term memory holds a large amount of information, we will know how our memory systems organizes its contents so that the right information is available at the right time. The process of storing and retrieving information depends on the representation and organization in memory. The most important unit of representation of knowledge in long-term memory is concept. Now, what are these concepts? Concepts are mental categories for objects and events which are similar to each other in one way or the other. Concepts are basically the general idea or some imagination or some explanation of certain things or object in events. This general idea of certain events or object in an individual mind helps in classifying those objects or events. For example, when we heard the word zebra, because of our learning experiences stored in our long-term memory, we can understand that zebra is a category of an animal. So, concept once get organized, once get formed, it is organized in categories. People form mental concepts of categories of objects which permit them to respond appropriately to new objects or events. A concept itself is a category itself is a concept that it functions to organize similarities among concepts based on common features. For example, sparrow comes under the category of a bird. Now, this sparrow also have different categories, say like song sparrow, chirping sparrow, and white ground sparrow. Now, even though there are different species, there are different categories. These all categories come under and can confirm in one group as birds. Now, even though there are different spaces, we have the concept in our mind that all these categories of species comes under a category of a bird. Now, this concept may also get organized in schema. Now, schema is a mental framework of representation of the knowledge and the assumption about the world that exists. So this whole concept was brought under representation and representation of knowledge and how we actually organize the information in our long-term memory. It is the basic level at which our knowledge is represented and at which concepts are organized. Now let us look at the higher level of organization that concept acquire in long-term memory. Now there are various theories of how knowledge is represented and organized in the mind that can be rule-based production models, distributed networks, and propositional models. Now, in the year 1969, Alan Collins and Quillen first introduced a theory called Hierarchical Network Model of Memory. Now, in the year 1969, Alan Collins and Quillen first introduced a theory called the Hierarchical Network Model of Semantic Memory. This was the first systematic model of semantic memory. Now, we have already discussed earlier in the previous class that semantic memory refers to someone's long-term memory. Now, these are the concepts. Semantic memory are the concepts or the ideas that are not formed from personal experience, but more from common knowledge, such as the sounds of letters and sound. They propose that memory is organized by nodes connected with links, the nodes of categorization of information to which other nodes of information are connected and organized into a hierarchy arranged in two sets, that is superordinate and subordinate. The first being node which is referred to being a major concept such as animal or a bird. The second is a property also referred to as being the attributes or features of the concept such as brown or animals. Let us now look at how Collins and Quillen study as an example of better understanding of this model, of this hierarchy model. In this hierarchy, they have organized a structure that one can see the subordinate and superordinate. Superordinate of canary as a bird, of shark as a fish, and the subordinate of fish is animal. So one can further notice that a properly characterizing a particular class of things is assumed to be stored only at one place in a hierarchy that corresponds to that class. This assumption is based on cognitive economy. Now, what is cognitive economy? Cognitive economy refers to the information that is stored at one level of hierarchy, and that information is not repeated at any other levels. A fact or concept is stored at the highest level in which it applies to. For example, fish would be under the category of animal and not just as fish. So that was the explanation of today's topic. Thank you and stay safe.